Let's begin our disease state analysis with the classic use of TUDCA in the liver. As stated, TUDCA is the only drug approved by the US FDA for the treatment of primary biliary cholangitis, from now on PBC. Cholangiopathies are direct effects of hydrophobic bile acids on cell membrane, activation of autophagy, and induction of senescence, as well as induction of the ER stress and immune-mediated injury. So, if you were listening, we just touched on the hydrophilic and phobic nature of bile acids, as well as ER stress, which we just covered. It is established that the cytotoxicity of bile acids decreases with their increasing hydrophilicity, water liking, like TUDCA. In fact, the conjugation with taurine makes TUDCA more polar, which accounts for higher therapeutic effectiveness of TUDCA. Compared to TUDCA is better absorbed by the intestines and liver because of being fully ionized and water-soluble at various pH values. Recent multicenter randomized clinical trials have shown that TUDCA presents the same level of safety and tolerability as TUDCA for the treatment of primary biliary cholangitis, and may even be better to relieve symptoms of the disease. TUDCA normally comprises about 1 to 7% of the bile acids, and we see here 7.7%. Now, if you give TUDCA, some will be conjugated in the liver to TUDCA. If you give TUDCA, some percentage will be deconjugated by the microbiome to TUDCA. So again, for our purposes here, TUDCA is TUDCA and TUDCA is TUDCA. One is a drug and the other is a supplement. And as you can see here, over 1 year of TUDCA treatment resulted in a huge increase in the hydrophilic TUDCA with large respective decreases in the other hydrophobic bile acids. So clearly its administration changes the bile acid profile. And one end result is that the bile acid transporters, which are down-regulated in cholestasis, think sluggish liver or bile, are upregulated with TUDCA. Cholangiocytes are the epithelial cells lining the biliary tree. They are polarized cells that contain a significant amount of transport proteins that allow the secretion of large amounts of bicarbonate, water, and chloride that enrich the bile and contribute to regulate biliary pH, which is important for activation of pancreatic enzymes. Everyone is always taking enzymes. And the absorption of lipophilic organic compounds. Hydrophobic bile acids are strong detergents that can cause membrane disruption by lipid solubilization, while hydrophilic bile acids, like TUDCA, can stabilize cell membranes. Bicarbonate secretion has protective action against the detergent effects of hydrophobic bile acids. Treatment with hydrophilic bile acids induces bicarbonate secretion by several mechanisms. Hydrophilic bile acids can also inhibit apoptotic signaling pathways at the level of mitochondria or indirectly through anti-inflammatory effects by binding to the glucocorticoid receptor and counteracting the pro-inflammatory effects of bile acids. So let's take a look at TUDCA use in PBC. The aim of the study was to assess the association of TUDCA response and liver-related death or transplantation, hepatic decompensation, and hepatocellular carcinoma in patients with PBC cirrhosis. Of 501 subjects, 287 were TUDCA responders and 214 were partial responders. In general, when it comes to PBC, approximately 30% of subjects are only partial responders to TUDCA. Their data shows that TUDCA response is associated with a 51% reduction in death or transplantation and a greater magnitude, 60% reduction, in liver-related death or transplantation. The data also suggests that the benefit associated with TUDCA is greatest in patients with portal hypertension. These data also support a recommendation that TUDCA should be continued even after the development of advanced fibrosis. Now, why someone is a responder or not is uncertain, but this is for PBC. As you'll see, TUDCA has many more applications. To wrap up PBC, we have this study which performed a comparative analysis of the gut microbiome in PBC versus healthy controls, and had a subgroup of patients who underwent 6 months of OICA treatment. In Table 1, you can see significant improvements in liver function tests following OICA therapy. And they found a lot of classic microbial findings too. In A, you can see these significant differences in the abundance of genera between PBC subjects and healthy controls. The healthy controls had significantly more Faecalibacterium, no surprise for like the millionth time in my videos, as well as the health promoter Oscillospira, while the PBC subjects had significantly more R-specific pathogens, Klebsiella, Streptococcus, Veillonella, and members from the bad family Enterobacteriaceae, which we'll get into in a second. And also for the millionth time, we see your probiotic Lactobacillus lumped in with the bad actors. In B, the OICA treatment reduced Pseudomonas and Streptococcus, a good thing, and increased Oscillospira, also a good thing. And in C, we get back to the theme of response to PBC. Those with an inadequate response to OICA had significantly more Veillonella in their microbiome than those who responded. To return to Enterobacteriaceae, as I always say, it's the last family you want high amounts of in your microbiome. In this study, bacterial invasion of epithelial cells in PBC, sound familiar, like in the gut, no? Highly correlated with the abundance of bacteria belonging to Enterobacteriaceae. These members from the family of Enterobacteriaceae showed the strongest association with PBC and demonstrated a 6.4-fold increase in patients compared with controls. Upon closer examination, these species were Klebsiella pneumoniae, E. coli, and Enterobacter cloacae. E. coli, you know by now. Klebsiella pneumoniae, I often highlight. Here, Klebsiella displayed a positive correlation with serum levels of bilirubin, which is an important prognostic factor of PBC. In addition, Klebsiella species are associated with urinary tract infections. Of note, recurrent urinary tract infections are a risk factor for the development of PBC. And especially E. coli and K. pneumoniae have been found to be the most common bacteria that translocate into the mesenteric lymph nodes and liver and cause bacterial infection in patients with liver cirrhosis. This is in addition to the hours of videos I have highlighting across multiple disease states how these and other opportunistic pathogens drive disease. So you clearly don't want a high abundance of these guys in your microbiome. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and recommend to friends and family. Also, if you're feeling extra generous, hit the super thanks below. In this review, these authors looked at the beneficial effects of OICA in NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. NAFLD is considered the hepatic manifestation of metabolic syndrome, characterized by an accumulation of lipids in the liver and being strongly associated with insulin resistance, impaired glucose tolerance, type 2 diabetes, abdominal obesity, hypertriglyceridemia, and hypertension. Again, it's all connected. There is no drug approved for the treatment of NAFLD. Weight loss and dietary changes are standards of care. But if you read the quotes from this paper, if this natural compound were marketed as a drug, I'll bet it would make a fortune. Of course, we need to focus on the microbiome as well. More on that in my video on liver health. And if we take liver disease one step further beyond NAFLD, we get NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is characterized by an accumulation of triglycerides with the appearance of inflammatory infiltrate and cell apoptosis, cell death, with an evolution towards fibrosis and subsequently cirrhosis. In this review, of the 7 studies that solely used OICA, liver function significantly improved in 5 studies, and steatosis and fibrosis improved in 2 studies. And here is a long quote you can pause and read supporting several of the themes we've been highlighting.